Welcome back. Sounds like you had a great morning. I hope you enjoyed everything last night. I had a great time at the alumni reception. I know you all had talk afterwards, so I hope all of this has been a really nice experience for you. We still have a couple of more sessions today, and I know this will probably be one of the of utmost interest to all of you. So without further ado, I'd like to kick off your GSB career journey with our Assistant Dean and Director, Jamie Shine of our Career Management Center. Jamie.
Hi, everyone. It's great to see you all here. It's great to have folks on Zoom as well. I'm thrilled to welcome you on behalf of the Career Management Center and all of our team there. And I will be talking for a few minutes to give you a sense of what it's like from a careers perspective at the GSB. And then I'll welcome up our panel of current students. And so you notice that we say that your career journey really starts with you. And we say that because when you're here, our goal in working with you is to ensure that as you go through the process and as you end up with a job or an internship, that you really feel grounded in an understanding of your personal values, priorities, skills, and interests. We hope that you're satisfied that you've considered all different possibilities. We hope that you're confident in your preparation, and we hope you're excited about the opportunity that you're going to pursue. Now, when we talk about a career journey, it sounds very structured and like it's a clear process. But we also know that when you're here at the GSB, it can feel more like this. There are tons of competing priorities, there are tons of competing events, and it's really hard to stay focused on what's important to you. And so part of the work we do is to help you really identify what is important to you and to put some structure around what may feel a little chaotic. And we do that by implementing what we call the career journey framework. It's something that we developed after years of working with students like you, and it starts with you. It starts with reflecting on what is important to you, what your values are, what your priorities are. And those can really help you focus as you explore different industries, different opportunities, and then target companies. And then ultimately, after you interview, you get some offers, you decide what you want to do. That's where the framework comes together, because we hope that you will then reflect back on those values and priorities that you identified early on and ensure that the opportunity you accept is going to map to those values and priorities. So as we work with students, and we do this every year, we ask students to tell us what companies they're interested in. This is what the class of 2024 told us, and we'll ask you the same this summer. Now, this list is very long. It's actually shorter than the class before. So these guys listed about over 400 companies that they were potentially interested in joining for an internship or a job. But there are a couple things that are consistent from year to year. The list is long, and many of the companies, most of the companies are only mentioned by one student. And that really is a reflection of the breadth of your interests, the breadth of your goals. And we're here to support you in that. We're set up so that we can support you as you explore your very own personal career opportunities. The other thing that's consistent here is the most common response. Now, the most common response every year is this one. It's unknown. And there's a couple reasons for that. Number one, I'm sure you've heard this before, the GSB is a transformational opportunity. You're coming here for a new experience, and you may be here to explore a new idea, a new path. You may be here to pivot to a different function, to a different industry. And so you may not know yet where that's going to lead you, and you're going to take the 2 years here to explore that. That's great. We're here to support you. Now, some of you are also maybe here to start your own company. And we work very closely with the Center for Entrepreneurial Studies. And students go back and forth between us all the time. I'm going to focus on job seekers today. But we know that it may be unknown because you don't know what company you're going to start, and that's all great. We have tons of resources here to support you. And the resources come in a bunch of different flavors. One, we have a curriculum of career education. We have workshops, we have employer presentations, and our career education, everything related to career at the GSB is opt-in. You can participate in as many of the workshops, visit as many of the employers as you wish that are relevant to you. We also have a team of 6 full-time career advisors. They have different industry focuses, and you can meet with one, you can meet with all, it can vary depending on where you are. You might want to meet with one for interview prep and someone else when you're negotiating an offer. That's fine, that's the way we're set up. We also have an employer engagement team. So that list of companies helps to inform the work of our employer engagement team. So they'll do outreach on your behalf. They're talking to companies all the time. They are also focused on industries, so they're keeping up on the trends in different industries. They are looking at companies that are started, companies that are getting funded. They keep track of the different job boards. They work with our alumni a ton because alumni are a great source of job opportunities, and they're here for you. They're kind of more behind the scenes, but they're here working for you. And then finally, we have some fantastic online resources, really in-depth online resources. You'll see some of them now on My GSB, and more will become available to you when you're a student here. So take a look. We encourage you to look at the Career Experience tab on My GSB, and you'll see a whole bunch of great resources there. I'll mention a few. All right, so what's next for the CMC? When will you next interact with us? Well, we have a couple of workshops this summer. One is called Creating Your Career Possibilities, and that's an opportunity for you to think about different career options you might want to explore. And we really encourage at this point expansive thinking. We don't want you to be too narrow, to think, have the bar be too low. We want you to think expansively. So this is a great workshop. It's virtual and with your classmates all around the world. And then the next is more tactical. It's an intern, it'll give you a sense of your MBA 1 year, the timeline of internship recruiting. So that's coming as well. And then here's the resources on My GSB. The Career and Life Reflection Workbook is a series of exercises you can do on your own or maybe with a partner. And we've got career guides around different industries. We've got the employment report. We just published it earlier this month for the class of 2022. And then we have really tactical things about putting your resume and personal statement together. So that's it for me. And without further ado, let's bring up the panel. All right, so we have all of the panel's information. So we have Oyinda, we have Preston, Paula, Kathleen, and Jonathan. And all of their personal information is up there so they can just go straight into their career experiences. And so what I'd love to do, and we'll just go straight down the line, starting with Oyinda, we'd love to have you kick off by sharing a little bit about yourself and your career aspirations when you came to the GSB.
Okay. Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you all. My name is Oyinda. Prior to the GSB, I worked in consulting, then at a startup. And coming into the GSB, I knew I wanted to stay in an entrepreneurial career. So I explored 3 paths. I was thinking about either VC, another startup, or the search fund. And while I was at the GSB, while exploring search funds, I came across PE Ops. And so after graduation, I'll be working in PE Ops.
Hi, I'm Preston. Coming into the GSB, I really didn't know what I wanted to explore. I was debating going back into my previous private equity role. I was interested in exploring other investing roles such as venture capital and public equity investing. And I even had a small itch for entrepreneurship. Once I got here, I was able to talk to various alumni and go to career events to be able to demystify these various career paths. And I ended up deciding to go into public equity investing.
Good morning, everyone. Excited to be here with you this morning. I'm Paula. Coming to the GSB, I wanted to pivot both company size, because I was working for early stage startups, and industry. I was working in fintech and wanted to move into education. Because I had two pivots, I created multiple opportunities to go and try out these different hypotheses. So on the education side, I joined the impact fund in the education team to feel what investing in education would be like. And I did a GMix also in an education company in Colombia. To try out the company size hypothesis, I did my summer at Google. So I stick to the same role, product, but in a larger company this time. Finally, I decided to go back to Google and accept my offer. So enjoyed my summer opportunity very much.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the GSB. My name is Kathleen Schwind. Prior to the GSB, I was working as an independent consultant, mainly with the federal government and for organizations in the Middle East. You'll see the 2+ up there because I started that gig when I was an undergrad, so just continued it through after my master's until I came to the business school. So I knew that coming into the GSB, my long-term goal was to serve in government. So serve in an appointed position in the White House or the State Department, working on national security and defense topics. And so coming here, I thought, okay, what is the best avenue through the private sector to get to that role? And so worked very closely with the CMC, landed on consulting. And so I worked at McKinsey over the summer in their DC office with public sector clients, and we'll be going back after that before pivoting again back into the public sector.
Awesome. All right. Hey, everybody. How's it going? I'm John. So prior to the GSB, I worked at Vans, the footwear company, for about 4 years. And I really didn't know whether I wanted to keep working in what was kind of a niche, what was kind of like consumer footwear apparel. This is what I want to keep doing. I was thinking about moving to a job at J.Crew, and I decided I needed to pause. And that was a main reason I went to business school, was to explore, do I want to keep working in this industry, or do I want to pivot into something like sports or entertainment, something I wasn't even thinking about? And so what was nice was talking to different CMC advisors, going to events, talking to classmates, very quickly realized that, yes, I really do like footwear and apparel. I like the creativity. I like the brand part of it, but decided I wanted to explore different areas beyond just the corporate world that I knew really well. So that allowed me to start thinking about startups as an internship, going into PE, VC, all of those different areas. And so I ended up getting a startup internship for the summer, and pretty confident I wanted to stay within the consumer space going forward.
Great. Well, John, let's stick with you.
Great.
If you think about your internship, how did you prepare and how did you ultimately make the decision to accept that internship?
Sure. So I'll be honest with everybody. I did not do really very much on internship my first quarter at GSB. Like, my first priority when I got here was really just to work on me, think about like mental, physical health, be present, meet a bunch of people, which I think in the end was really beneficial, because when I started the actual internship search process in January, February time, I was a lot more confident in myself. I had a lot more energy to actually spend into it. So the first things that I did after working with the CMC folks and really understanding, all right, I want to stay in consumer, was I did some more investing interviews around PVC. And I realized quickly that I was just not actually motivated to prep for the interviews. I could get half the way, but I wasn't that excited about it. And I was like, I got to take that as a signal. Like, this is just not something I'm that interested in. So that clarified myself. I was like, I really want to focus on startup. So I was able to source them through the CMC, got an offer there, but I was also able to source an opportunity through a classmate. Basically, a classmate's boyfriend had started a 3-person or so startup, and ended up working with him for March, April time, and decided, like, I really like this. I'm going to be able to see a bunch of different things that I otherwise wouldn't be able to learn. And so I ended up doing that for the summertime.
Great, Kathleen.
So my process was a bit more structured just because of the nature of recruiting for consulting. So again, coming in with this long-term goal, my first step was to go to the CMC. I had a hypothesis that I'd be going into consulting or VC, but wanted to learn more about the opportunities in both of them. Again, with this ultimate idea of pivoting back into the public sector. So went to the CMC, sat down with the advisors for consulting and VC, decided that just by the nature of timeline, VC is usually a little bit more self-sourcing that starts in the winter and the spring. Consulting starts right after academic adjustment period. So AAP is, if you haven't heard of it, it's the first 5 weeks that you're at the GSB. Employers can't reach out. You're not looking for a job. It's a time to settle in, get to know your classmates, really understand, kind of like John was saying, what's important to you? What are you trying to get out of this place in business school? So right after that ended, consulting interview prep started, case prep, talking with classmates, talking with recruiters that came to campus. And then those interviews were early January. Ended up getting an offer, spoiler alert. And so by the end of January, I already had my offer in hand after talking with a lot of partners at the firm and also with classmates and the CMC. To me, it seemed like the best opportunity to go forward, to both build a personal brand, to build an area of expertise, to build up a network that would help me get into the White House or the State Department. And so VC just became not relevant anymore. So stuck with McKinsey and was really glad I did.
On my end, because I wanted to move to later stage companies, I decided to focus on big tech, which follows a different timeline. So I started applying and interviewing a little earlier than my colleagues. So as the first quarter started, I drew a strategy of the things I want to focus on and the things I do not want to try out. Like as you start the quarter after AAP, you're going to see there are multiple opportunities, and it can be kind of hard if you don't decide the things that you do not want to do. I didn't want to spread myself too thin, so I just decided I don't want to do VC, I don't want to do PE ops. I really want to focus either big tech or education post Series C. I applied by December. I did all my interviews in early January and got offers by February. I think also, like, I echo everything that Kathleen and Jonathan said. One thing which is also very important is to focus energy and find resources when the time comes to decide which offer to take. Just like which one are you gonna able to build a network, or where you're going to leverage your strengths or the things you want to test out. So I did spend quite some time and talked a lot to the CMC advisors around which offer was best suited to the things I wanted to pursue. And to me, it was also important to have two different experiences close to each other. So I made sure that I chose a company that was very different from Google in my GMX, just to say, like, where do I feel more energized? Like, where do I feel like I have the best fit? So just like also, besides the CMC, there are a lot of clubs that you can reach out to, like to talk to people, to alumni, to current students, to kind of like hear the unfiltered version of their experiences. So that was very important to me, going through all of these informal conversations.
For me, I first had to decide what I want to do for my summer internship. I went to a CMC event called Career and Life Priorities. The end product of this event was we created 3 potential career paths we could pursue. For me, one of these career paths required that I intern in the field, and that was public equity investing. And the other 2 career paths I'd be able to explore as an MBA too, and that was entrepreneurship and potentially going back to my previous private equity firm. So once I narrowed it down to public equity investing, I went to the CMC to create a list of high priority firms to reach out to. We came up with about 5 firms, largely mutual funds, and then they connected me with alumni at all those firms so I could start conversations with them. On the interview prep front, the main deliverable you have to do is a stock pitch. So I leveraged resources from the Finance and Investment Club here to create that stock pitch. I then practiced it with MBA 2s, the CMC, as well as communication coaches, which is like our amazing resource we all get access to as a student here. Finally, before all my real interviews, I did a kind of more holistic interview prep session with the CMC, specifically Bill Thompson, who actually used to be a senior vice president at Fidelity, the place I ended up going to. I got my offer from Fidelity early on, kind of before the first quarter ended, which is typically early for the processes they run. And I really liked the firm, so decided to accept it.
On my end, like I said earlier, I came in with 3 options. So that was VC, join another startup, or do search funds. And so just do my own thing. Very early on in the quarter, I sat with the CMC to discuss what a career in VC would look like. And they suggested that I speak to people in the industry. They connected me to people in the industry. After a lot of those conversations, I didn't feel very excited about going into VC. And so in a follow-on conversation with the CMC, we decided to rule out VC as an option. And so I moved on to my next option, which was startups. And considering I had worked in startups before, a question that came up in my conversation with one of the CMC advisors was, what gets you excited? What are you most excited about? And that for me was luxury fashion, just because I enjoyed it as a hobby or just on the side. And so I decided to join or try to look for opportunities within that space for the summer to explore whether or not I wanted to stay in that space and pivot industries. In terms of timeline, first quarter was exploring VC and ruling that out. Second quarter was a lot of introspection, thinking about what matters most to me, what do I enjoy, what gives me energy. And then the third quarter was then looking for opportunities within that space. And because startup recruiting starts pretty late in the year, I think I got my offer like 4 weeks before school went out. So from the first interaction to when I got the offer, it was like 5 days. But then that was like right before school went out. So sometimes there could be that anxiety around everyone has an offer, but you don't. But then you just have to understand the industries that you're interacting with and what their timelines typically look like.
Great, thanks, Ayinda. A couple things I want to highlight that you heard from them. One is a lot of reflection going on, which is definitely something we emphasize. And the workshop that Preston described is the workshop that we're going to be offering over the summer. The second thing you heard was ruling things out. Definitely important to get the noise away. And then the third was the very different timelines they had for their recruiting and their offers and their acceptances. So that's really typical. People are getting offers throughout the year from early on to, even less than 4 weeks before school is out. So that's great. All right, thank you. So Ayinda, we'll stick with you. And can you tell us about how your internship informed your post-GSB plans? And also both Ayinda and Paula are international students. And so if you could also just touch on what that was like and how you incorporated that into your job search thinking.
Okay, so after the summer at this tech startup, I liked the job, but it very much felt like what I was doing before the GSB. It was a different industry, but my function was the same. And one of the things that I thought about coming to the GSB was to push myself a little harder, take more risk. So coming back from the summer, I then ruled out like joining an early stage startup as an option because I felt like I had done that. And for me, the growth that I wanted out of the GSB was to be able to take on the full responsibility of an organization and run it. So I focused now on the search fund, and it was while exploring what like a career and search fund looks like that I came across PE Ops, because there was a similar opportunity in that organization. So yeah, that was helpful to help me understand like what I enjoyed, what I could do and what I could do more of. As an international student, I really wasn't concerned about the summer because every international student gets the CPT, which allows you to work over the summer and doesn't require the organization to do anything. From a full-time perspective, it didn't really apply to me because the company I ended up accepting an offer from sponsors international students. However, I have spoken to a lot of international students who are concerned about like companies sponsoring them or not. And I think that's a conversation you should have very early on with the organization to understand whether or not they're going to sponsor you and whether or not that's a decision that's fine with you. And then there are some companies who don't understand the sponsorship process and think it's one big complicated mystery. And that's an opportunity for you to have that conversation with them and demystify it and highlight the steps they need to take in order to sponsor you. And I have seen cases where people have done that and companies that have never sponsored an international student end up sponsoring them.
For me, I really viewed the role of a summer internship as a way to trial run a different career path. I ended up loving my time at Fidelity. I loved how it was a really pure form of investing. And as I kind of as I did like a pro-con listing about compensation, lifestyle, autonomy, and job itself versus private equity, I thought Fidelity would be a better fit for me personally and decided to go back there full time.
For me, similarly to Ayinda, I felt extremely comfortable in my Gmix because I was doing product, early stage. That's the thing I wanted to do, and not that comfortable within Google. So I felt like that's the place I had the most to learn from, where a very different skill set was required from my end. That's why I decided to accept Google's offer. Being an international student, there were also other factors come into play for my decision. So I wanted a company that would sponsor my visa beyond the CPT, as Oinda mentioned. I wanted a company that had a lot of international mobility. What if I want to transfer to Brazil a few years from now? Maybe I want to stay at the same company. So I also wanted to have that visibility. I used a lot of the online resources at the CMC website. There are like some databases where international students are working at right now, where they work right out of the GSB. So I had a lot of conversations with international students at Google at that moment, just to hear how has it been for them. And I think also rely on the clubs a lot. In my case, I relied on LASA, the Latin America Student Association Club, just like to discuss with other students how they were going around their own decisions, like alumni from the club, when it was their turn to choose how they went about it. I think that's important to collect as multiple perspectives before committing to something. And the last thing I wanted to say is like there are other things beyond your formal internship to try out these hypotheses you have. So in my case, I did the impact fund, and that informed me somehow of the decision moving forward.
For me, I always had an idea that consulting would work out really well, just the way that I learned, the way I like to work on projects. And I had a great summer, not only because I was staffed in the Bahamas, so spent 4 to 5 days a week down there, but really going in, what helped me decide was coming up with 3 things that I wanted to test out and see if McKinsey was the right place. One of those was building an area of expertise. Can I, after a couple of years there, walk away with a 1 or 2 sentence explanation of what am I an expert at and why would someone want to put me in their administration? Number 2 was a network. Like, how do you, with politics, with a lot of things, it's all about who you know. And so is McKinsey a place that is going to make that network for me, specifically in the national security and defense space? And the third thing was finding champions and mentors, which I think is important across industries, but especially in a space that it is very much seniority based. There's a lot of changes happening. If I can find those people who will help invest in my career, that was essential. And McKinsey blew it out of the park on all 3.
That's awesome. All right. So when you get to Stanford, you hear a stat about how like 90% of startups fail. And if you're like me, you're like, that doesn't apply to me or like anything that I would touch. It turns out it did. I mean, so over the summer, I worked for a startup that didn't fail, but definitely struggled. And that was an incredible learning experience for me. As I said, it was really small. So I got to touch everything from visiting factories, seeing lawyers, making a pitch deck, doing sales decks, all the stuff that I really wanted responsibility for, but also got to see the struggles that come with like a really small startup at the beginning. And that was a learning for me. Like, my risk profile isn't necessarily for that, and that's okay. But it also confirmed like I do love responsibility, especially responsibility that related to brands, consumer, footwear, apparel. So I was like, great, I know where I want to go. I can cross off a really early stage startup. I can clarify the fact that my end goal 5 to 10 years from now is to be the president of a brand. So what steps do I need to go to actually achieve that? So as you can tell, I am the only person here right now on this panel that doesn't have a job going forward, but that's okay. I feel good about like the recruiting cycle hasn't necessarily started for me just yet. Just like internship cycles come different times, but I know that I want to find something that's a little bit more mature than the startup that I worked at previously, but keep that level of responsibility and be able to grow along the way.
Fantastic. Thanks, John. Let's stick with you, and we have time for our lightning round.
Great.
So if you could share with our audience what you know now about the CMC or the job search process that you wish you had known when you were sitting on Zoom in most of your cases.
Great. Yeah. So you actually had it on one of your slides earlier. So maybe you had told me during my admit weekend, I didn't pay attention to it. But the idea of talking to multiple members of the CMC. So the main person I talked to is this lovely woman named Grace, who really knows consumer really well. And I think I would have thought like, oh, I'll just meet with her, that'll be fine. But I also met with Bill Thompson that I think Preston mentioned. Met with other people at the CMC, and they were all really powerful in giving me more perspectives, able to help in different sorts of ways. And to be honest, they all kind of feel like therapy sessions when you talk to them. So that in of itself was nice just to hear from a bunch of different folks.
Thanks.
For me, there are more resources at the GSB that you can possibly take advantage of, whether that's the CMC and having so many advisors for consulting, so many opportunities for case prep, but not only the CMC, but faculty and your classmates as well. I mean, you could walk around and be getting coffee with someone and find out that they're working exactly for the partner that you want to get connected with. So for me, that was, it wasn't surprising, but just like the breadth and the depth of resources was definitely mind-blowing.
For me, coming to the GSB, I thought I needed to have very structured questions before scheduling a session with a CMC advisor. So I made the mistake of scheduling my first advice session after I got my first offer. And I wish I had used these advisors to kind of outline my strategy before moving forward. I thought like, I'm not ready for the session, but that's what they're there for. And if I can give a second advice for international students, take all the workshops, especially those related to networking. I felt those were very helpful to me.
For me, I had no idea how incredible the professional backgrounds were of the CMC advisors. A lot of them, like I mentioned, like Bill Thompson, Senior Vice President of Fidelity, and that's like pretty typical amongst all of them. They've all done these incredible careers, and they've worked in a lot of either industries or functions that you're interested in. So reach out like as early as possible to them to talk about your hypothesis, what you might be interested in, and they can give you a ton of valuable advice. So don't wait until you're more further along in the process. Just do it when you get here, when you just want to think about something out loud.
Yeah, I'm gonna also echo everything around meeting with the CMC advisors, but I think one other thing I didn't really think would happen coming to GSB was that I would get my internship and my full-time through CMC related events or directly from CMC. I just thought I was going to be Superwoman and figure it out by myself, but my internship was literally on the CMC job portal. And I was checking that every day because I clearly didn't have a job like a month before the summer rolled up. So I was like, okay, I need to find something. And I'm checking the CMC every day and I see this very perfect opportunity. And I'm like, wow, okay, this is surprising. And then my full-time offer, Alpine had a CMC event where they came to speak to the students, and I had a gap between my two classes. And I'm like, okay, there's a CMC event. I'm just going to roll through to that. And then I'm sitting there listening to what they do. And I'm like, oh my God, this sounds exactly like what I wanted to do. And so I ended up applying to that and getting the job, but I would never guess that that would be how I would find my jobs.
Great, thank you. All right, we have some time for questions from you all. So Christine, do we have a microphone or should I just repeat the questions?
I think we'll just repeat the question.
Okay.
And we're keeping an eye out to see if any questions come through here.
Okay, great. Any questions for the panel? Yeah.
Mentioned the academic adjustment period a lot, but it also sounds like a lot of recruiting starts pretty early in the first quarter. So do you have to be like ready to hit the ground running as soon as that academic adjustment period ends?
I'll take that one and then I'll hand it off to any of the panelists. So during the academic adjustment period, I would say if from what I hear from students, it's really busy and then the academic adjustment period ends and then it's really, really busy. But the idea is that I think John mentioned that it's where you kind of get grounded in, your life, being a student again. But there's also a ton of the career education workshops that I mentioned. A lot of them happen in the autumn quarter during the AAP. So things like whether it's a networking workshop, we have a day that's called Career Exploration Day, where we bring 8 panels of alumni back that are working in jobs that are closely aligned to what a lot of students seem to be interested in. So there's still a lot you can do to help clarify where you want to focus. And then there are some recruiting. Who recruited in the fall? Yeah, so there's some recruiting in the fall. But about a lot of students get their jobs in the late winter or spring. So this is super typical where you might, right now, if you think about it, it's a small growth company. They don't really have the runway. They don't really they don't have planning so far in advance that they know what internships they're going to offer for the spring. So they'll get their plans in line roundabout now, between now and April, and then they'll start to recruit. So does anyone want to chime in on AAP and what you need to do after?
Yeah, I'll just add one quick thing. I don't know what people's undergrad experiences were like, but it felt like there were a very small number of jobs that everyone was competing for, and it could feel competitive. Whereas I feel like at the GSB, everyone's doing their very own individualized career path, that people know what they want. And I think from that naturally spews like a big vibe of collaboration. So while AAP might end and then some people are going to go into the job search right away, not everyone is doing it. And you don't feel that same sense of like, oh, I got to be keeping up. I got to be doing this sort of thing that I think was a lot more common in undergrad experience.
And I'll just add, so I recruited in the fall, but Fidelity has a more formal recruiting process for Stanford in the winter after the AAP period. I was also an MLT, and Fidelity had a recruiting process with MLT, and that's why I had earlier interviews, because I went through that route for my recruiting.
And MLT is Management Leaders for Tomorrow. Great, thank you. Any other questions? I don't see. Oh, hi. Great. So the question is how plugged in Stanford is to startups outside the Bay Area. New York and Boston were the examples. Does anyone want to chime in here?
I can go again. I don't want to dominate, but so to that point, I did get an offer for a New York apparel startup that was sourced through the CMC, and I actually maintain a relationship with them and have been talking with them about a full-time role. So I think there are definite sources of it. And just, I feel like anecdotally, a lot of people from Stanford do also go to New York. So there's still the network there. I think the Bay Area just might be bigger from it's right there, right? We're like 10, 20 miles away. So I think that's the difference, but I don't feel like it was only Bay Area.
Yeah, and in my case, the company had offices in the Bay and New York. So I was in the Bay Area for a little bit because that was where kind of like the product and the technical side was. And then I was in the New York side as well, because that was where the fashion and the photo shoots happened. So I worked remotely technically, but I think it's not very, like, there are opportunities wherever you're interested in, and it's not just specific to the Bay.
Yeah, and we do outreach around the world. I was in New York this summer, and there's just an amazing set of alumni who are in the healthcare space and startup space, certainly in finance. We go down to LA, arts, media, entertainment, a lot of companies down there. And so we'll reach out. Zoom's actually been great for that. We do a lot of our outreach on Zoom now. Nothing beats in person for really feeling what a company's like. But we maintain relationships with companies all around the world. And interestingly, because of the GSB is a STEM degree, so our international students can stay for up to 3 years using OPT. And so a lot of our international students have stayed in the US, but we certainly also support people doing international job searches. Yes, Christine.
We have one question from our folks tuning in on Zoom. Complete any pre-MBA internships, and do our incoming students have any access to student sources for school studies?
All right, so the question is, did anyone do a pre-MBA internship? And then I can chime in on the access before for admits.
I did a pre-MBA internship in VC. Again, I had 3 careers I was exploring. And so that helped me inform. But ironically, I did get that internship through my Stanford class. So we were on Slack and people were just posting opportunities. And I reached out to one of my classmates that I hadn't met before. And I was like, hey, you posted this. Can you make the connection? And she did. And I thought it was a good use of my time. But I also know a lot of people who haven't. So
I also did a pre-MBA internship, and I actually sourced that with a current GSB student that I met during Admit Weekend. And I ended up interning at the company she did her summer internship in. I was interested in education. She was also, I'm a joint degree student with the education school. And this student was also doing the joint degree program. So she connected me to a few companies, and I decided to join one for a 3-month pre-MBA internship.
Yeah, in terms of access to the CMC and the pre-MBA internships, we will post some pre-MBA internships, but many of them are informal. So take a look on my GSB in the career experiences page, and you'll find the ones that we know about. But I would say it's much more common to go the way that Oyinda and Paula did, where you're sourcing it on your own. We also have very limited resources for admitted students before school starts. So we do the series of workshops, and there are some opportunities to interact with our advisors, but most of that it'll kick off in week 0, which is your first week here. We have a great session called Engaging with the CMC, different than when you guys were here. And you have a chance to meet everyone in the Career Management Center, all of the advisors, everyone in employer outreach. We have the Center for Entrepreneurial Studies, for Social Innovation. So all of the adjacent groups, you'll have a chance to meet them right when you get here. Yes, all right. And so that brings us to the end of our time. Thank you very much to our panel.